he's kind of becoming a laughingstock there. So go ahead and, again, this is coming out of Red State, but it's been all over several other news outlets. But go ahead and give a gander at the write-up over at Red State, where Strife does, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Streiff. I speak German, so I'd say it's Strife. But he, or she, as the case might be, because by the single name I don't know the gender. So of course, using proper English grammar, we assume a he until we find out it's a she. So he's our generic and she's our special. But anyway, go ahead and take a look at the article over there, and it will interest you to get a little bit more of the details that they meter out in here, talking about the various things that Senator Walsh did throughout his career, and how a lot of the things he claimed were his own work were actually somebody else's. And now, as we continue down our parade of things to kind of enjoy and snicker about, let's hear what happened to our favorite Democratic Congresswoman. Now, of course, I'm talking about Ditzy Debbie Hand Puppet, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as she tried to claim things, Paul, her invented, in quotes, facts, and what happens when she gets fact-checked on the air during a TV interview. So enjoy the next minute. We'll be back to discuss briefly.
Second, they're legal. I think most Americans looking at this, though, Congresswoman, say, this law, it's shaky, it's a mess. You are one of the strongest supporters of this law. You have to be worried.
Actually, I think ultimately when the Supreme Court decides this, because obviously with dueling rulings and competing rulings, that's what's going to happen, it's going to be very clear that the unanimous ruling by the Fourth Circuit is the right one. The reason it's the right one is just take a state like Nevada, where you have a governor who refused to implement a state exchange, and as a result, people who get Affordable Care Act health care plans are getting them on the federal exchange. Congress...
That's not your fault. Hey, let me just stop you a second, because you were misinformed about that. Brian Sandoval put in a state exchange. He did. So whoever briefed you on that is wrong. He did put in a state exchange. He was the first Republican governor to do that.
Okay. That's not even the point.
You could pivot from that quickly.
That's fine. That's not even the point I'm making.
Okay.
Well, I stand corrected. I'm not from Nevada.
No, I know. That's why I say that's not.
So how about that? Good old Ditzy Debbie decides she's going to use Nevada as her example to lambaste Republican governors for not supporting Obamacare and putting up state exchanges. And the one state she chooses happens to be one that had a state exchange. Yeah, good job there, Ditzy Debbie. Maybe you should have stuck with your own state down there in Florida. Or do they have a state exchange? Or maybe you should have looked better. Maybe you should have, tried to set your sights on Texas again, so that you could get your, butt kicked, rhetorically, of course. And by rhetorically, I mean with rhetoric and debate. When Governor Perry, completely turns around and embarrasses you for the short-sighted, poodle-haired miscreant that you are. So, yeah, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is always good for a laugh. She opens her mouth, and the amount of stupid that falls out is just worthy of ridicule for months to come. But let's take a look at other things going on. And before the show closes out, of course, we do have to cover some actual news going on out there. I listened to the local morning show and get some news. It's a news show. It's not necessarily a talk show, although the local host Charlie Parker is really good at entertaining in between news bits. But of course, we get some hard news in there, and actual discussion of hard news and some additional facts beyond just the standard written AP, very stripped down. These are the facts guidelines. We get some additional facts in there as people give some background information and stuff. The news editor there, or news director at the local station, is really good about that when he pops on, and his name is John Forsyth. Great guy. So one of the things they were discussing this morning was the immigration and amnesty and asylum. Amnesty is just the wrong term. It's actually asylum that they're seeking for a lot of these kids. And he brought up a key point, and that is most of these kids will not qualify for asylum, even with the sex trafficking law that was passed, or not passed, but was renewed under Bush. It was already in effect, prior, dating back to Clinton. But even under that that law, that provision, adding the asylum for potential sex slaves, most of these kids do not qualify because they're not running from political. They're not political asylum seekers. They're not political refugees. They're running from violence in their home countries. That if they really oppose the violence going on there, if they have an ideological opposition to the street gangs and the crime, etc., then for political reasons, their job should actually be to stay there and fight this. They're not a victim of a political ideology or a politically oppressive regime. They're a victim of crime. And there's no provisions for asylum for crime victims other than sex slavery on the books here in the United States. So their claims for political asylum are empty. They're invalid. So with that, you've had groups kind of calling for, blanket asylum and amnesty for these kids, just saying, hey, just let them stay, they're already here. And a lot of that comes from the left. There's a left-winger local to where I live, named, he's Representative Henry Cuellar, who kind of doesn't support that point of view. Of course, his reasoning for not supporting it is because he supports the ethnic Mexicans and thinks that they're given an unfair shake, or these Central and South American kids are being given an unfair privilege. So he's actually kind of talking like a right-winger a little bit, saying, everything should be equal and everybody should get the exact same rights. Nobody should get special privileges. So, of course, the left is targeting him for actually coming out and saying these things. Of course, his purposes for doing it are collectivist in nature because he wants to support his special little collective that he's kind of sees himself as a champion of fighting for, because he does, of course, support, although I've never heard him directly say it, but he does seem to support a lot of La Raza's kind of agendas. Speaking of which, the city of San Antonio, their city council is considering passing ordinances of no action when concerned with illegal aliens, basically trying to turn San Antonio into another sanctuary city, which of course is against Texas law. There's already Houston's already in trouble for some of those attitudes, and should San Antonio kind of pass those we're not going to do anything about it ordinances, they're just inviting a bunch of extra Texas Rangers to be walking through the streets of San Antonio and enforcing laws that the city is refusing to enforce. And we're, of course, talking about state and federal laws at that point. So it'd be interesting to see how that turns out, because it really would be a dumb move on behalf of the San Antonio City Council. Of course, those of you who haven't heard, San Antonio has a new mayor. We now have Mayor Ivy Taylor, who's the first female black mayor of a city of more than 1 million people. So that kind of is a feather in her cap, and she's, for a Democrat, she's kind of right-leaning, so to speak. I guess she's a Tea Party Democrat. She's just barely left of center on many of her things. In fact, she was one of the city council people who opposed the latest, or the city ordinance that was passed last year, saying that they could take away a business's license if they show any kind of, if they refuse to serve the LGBTQZP, and I guess they're adding necrophilia to that laundry list of letters. But that community, the non-traditional, sexually non-traditional community, I guess what we just call them, because otherwise they're going to have every letter in the alphabet. We're just calling them the alphabet community. But anyway, so talking about that, the immigration and that stuff. Well, Senator Ted Cruz has filed the third of his trifecta, or what he was talking about, his 3 different bills to work to give a working solution of the current immigration crisis and the illegal aliens coming in, etc. And this new bill, let me see if I can get the exact name of it here. It is the Protect Children and Families Through the Rule of Law Act. How about that? Let's use the actual laws on the books to protect children and families, including those coming from other countries, sort of. But he wants to stop amnesty plans and programs and unilateral amnesty policies that are being done by the executive branch, despite the fact that only Congress can pass immigration law, not the executive branch per the Constitution. But Cruz wants to reform the William Wilberforce Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the one that was renewed during the Bush administration, was actually passed during the Clinton administration. Most people want to ignore that part because they want to blame Bush, but it was a Clinton era law. And wants to empower all governors to be able to use their National Guards to go and stop the crisis, whether it's an actual border crisis as in Texas, or to use the National Guard to kind of go through and, I guess, help the situations in the other states where some of these kids have been taken and kind of put in little detention centers in other states other than Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California, which, of course, are the border states. But Cruz filed his latest bill, and he even went on the floor, and I'm not going to play the audio for you because it's over an hour long. It's longer than the show. But Senator Cruz and Senator Sessions kind of went back and forth supporting this bill, talking about what things that need to be done. And later today, I'll have a write-up over at BuzzPo talking about the bill and the exchange of words and the what kind of went on with that. But that's kind of some, I guess you'd call it good news, because somebody's actually trying to do something now. The bad news is we all know that dingy, dirty Harry Reid isn't gonna even let this bill be voted on. So. And then talking again about Cruz, of course, Cruz is going on and talking about things going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip, and he basically calls the shutdown of flights originating in the United States, by U.S. flagged aircraft, commercial aircraft, of course, from flying into Israel, and he kind of calls it, or he refers to it, as an economic boycott of Israel. We're not going to let our people go over there. We're not going to let them go and be tourists. We're not going to let them go and do business, blah, 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 blah. And, to Ted Cruz, I love him to death. And although I will say that this is a little bit of an emotive rhetoric to kind of spin this up and kind of hyperbolize the issue, and he has a point there. But you have to look at things from another perspective too, and by stopping these flights, you're kind of protecting U.S. citizens and U.S. businesses at the same time. So it's kind of a fine line there. But Cruz has a definitive point there, because if an American wants to go to Israel, they just fly to another country that is flying in there, and as a stopping point, change airliners. If you really want to go over there. But the question is, are they going to let somebody stay? Well, where's your final destination? Tel Aviv or Jerusalem? And they're going to say, no, you can't leave the U.S. Is that really going to start happening? So you never know. You never know what the goals are. But there's some serious questions here that Senator Cruz raises, especially given the context of John Kerry's comments concerning the FAA's policy and actions. Among them, of course, is, was the decision based on airline safety, and why was Israel singled out when their flights are still permitted into other places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and other hotspots, but yet Israel was shut off? And that's a good question, because if it really was for people's safety and Americans' and safety, as well as Americans' business people's security, then why not shut off flights into several other countries like that, or ones down south of our border? I mean, think about where all these kids are coming from. Hey, we shut off the flights to those countries. So good questions to raise. Why choose Israel specifically? But that's kind of the where we're going to leave off with the show here. Some good questions being raised by the Texas senator. And with that, again, we have a great weekend coming up for you guys. And of course, we're not going to be on the air over the weekend, but we'll be back here on Monday. In the meantime, I want you to enjoy your weekend, enjoy the fruits of your labors, and enjoy your pursuit of happiness. Find that balance in your life. Then go out and enjoy life. Don't enjoy it too much, because if you enjoy it too much, you end up bringing yourself hardships that you might not want. Remember, all actions have consequences. But of course, the consequences of your hard work should be a balance of enjoying the fruits of those labors. So with all that in mind, I'm going to kind of say goodbye to the week and say goodbye to you on this Freedom Friday. And we'll see you back on Monday from 8 to 9. And remember, our call-in number for those who want to call in and chit-chat with me live on the air is 520-226-8567. All right, guys. You have a great weekend. Bye-bye.